in my inner sanctum where all the magic takes place, only there's no magic. It's only 30 feet from my house, so I have a really short commute. I can come out here in the middle of the night and work if I feel like it. But everything I do in here is done by me. I don't have apprentices. I never have. There's no elves. There's no magic. It's just me sitting here and doing whatever this is that I do. So to begin with, we have the all-important router. This is a Fordham flex shaft tool, and they don't make their own router bases, so I had to make this out of wood to fit the handpiece. Unfortunately, that's a 1-inch diameter handpiece, so it was easy to make this thing. I've got the plexiglass base on it so I can see what I'm doing besides right where I'm cutting. There's an air hose that goes to an air pump from an aquarium on the back of this that blows the dust out away from the work while I'm routing. If it's just a fingerboard on a plate, I have this lovely piece of aluminum that I can hook my vacuum up to. Vacuum is outside. I don't really hear too much noise, and while I'm routing, that's blowing the dust away from the router and into here and not into my nose. So I couldn't lift this after my heart attack. It took me a while to get back in enough shape to, this thing's 16 pounds. I put double-sided tape on here and put a fingerboard on it, and then I can easily work on that, and sometimes I can work on two things at once if I have one on this side too. The ever important optivisors, which take my regular glasses and double the prescription on them so I can really get down tight on things and see what I'm doing. Super glue in pipettes, the blades, the saw blades for the jeweler's saw. Right now, I started out using 4/0 blades, but right now I'm using 2/0, and I can still cut just as tight as I ever could with the smaller ones. My bench pin. This is a 1-inch thick piece of plexiglass with a 1/16 inch black anodized aluminum on top of it and a hole cut in it with the vacuum attachment that goes underneath. And this way, go to the larger vacuum hose, and when I turn that on, it pulls the dust from below the plate and from the top. So I never have to wear a mask. This plate here on the top is graphite. It's a diamond pattern graphite plate that I had left over from making a 6-string headless bass for Phil Lesh back when I worked for Modulus. And it had front and back plates that were this diamond patterned graphite on a spruce core, through body graphite neck, all aluminum hardware that I turned out on a Bridgeport when I was working in San Francisco down there. And it's one of the few instruments I've built for somebody else that I wish I still had. That was a nice bass. Only weighed about 7 pounds. Let's start to get into materials a little bit here. This is a bag of red abalone, 60 thousandths thick. I normally work in 40 thousandths, but sometimes I need to get into the thicker stuff because if I'm on a curved fingerboard, I have to be able to set it in deep enough where I won't sand through it. So if let's say I'm cutting this, the pattern will be glued on it. Usually in this area of the bench pin, because I can have the back of the blade against the front of the pin, and I can turn the work into it and turn the piece at the same time, or turn the blade at the same time as I'm turning the piece. Get really super clean and tight cuts that way. Lighting is very important. I have two, these are both dental lights. This one's from the 1970s. You can tell by the lovely orange color, like your mom's stove and refrigerator. This one I bought just recently. It's $500. It's LED and has multiple lighting sections on it. But I also had a problem with this when I got it, where this wasn't tight enough and it was just flopping around all over the place. So I had to just fit a bunch of plastic in there so it would stay put. So money always doesn't buy you top quality. When I cut things out, I put them into a vat or a little jar here of acetone, and it takes off the rest of the paper that's left after cutting it. And then I just, if it's big enough to cut something else out of it, it just goes back in with the rest of the uncut plates. Now I have, back here, I have red abalone, 60 thousandths, 50 thousandths, 40 thousandths thick. Green abalone, 40, 50, 60. White mother of pearl, mostly 40 and 60. Gold mother of pearl, so that's gold mother of pearl, that's the gold side. And then if you sand down far enough, you go through the coloring and you end up back in white mother of pearl. So you have to be aware of, you know, both sides of this solid material when you're cutting it. Over here I've got Paua shell from New Zealand. It's an abalone once again, but it's really blue and very vibrant colors in it. All of these things have their own personality too, and you can't just decide that this is what it's going to look like when you're done, because you get it on one side and it looks like this, and you get it on the other side and it's something different. And the Paua usually has some kind of wormholes in the underside of it. We're not getting the best quality stuff in the US. They save that for the New Zealand jewelers because that's where it comes from. But every time you sand down into a solid blank of something, it's going to be something else by the time you sand it down a little bit. These are some of my end mills. This is fairly large. This is 60 thousandths, and I use these to hog out large areas after I've gone around the perimeter with something smaller. These are 20 thousandths diameter. Pretty much of a difference. These are almost $30 a piece now with the tariffs and all the other bullshit that's going on. So I have to be careful when I'm using these not to snap them, because I can eat up any profit in a job instantly. This is a saw that I use. I just hook it up to the blower if I'm cutting plastics or recon stone. What happens is there's some kind of electrostatic charge on the top of it that will just keep the dust right there, and you're either doing that and hyperventilating and passing out at the desk, or running it through the blower, and that cleans off most of it. So I'll use that when I have to. This is reconstituted stone. Basically a slurry of epoxy and stone bits with some coloring that's made to look like particular items that you might find in nature or not. Like this is a Recon turquoise, and usually, oh, there's some malachite. This usually, it's not even real malachite. It's, like I say, it's just the color agent and how they mix it. This is real shell, but it's cut from very thin slices called feathers of shells that have been debonded somehow. I don't know how they do that. But 6 to 10 thousandths thick layers of shell that are all the same pattern, you know, from the same part of the shell, and they glue them end to end and side to side until they get enough for a 9.5 by 5.5 inch plate. And then they glue them top to bottom. So when you sand down through this, if you go through one layer, you're still going to be in the same material. And I think I already talked about this before. It's a little greener on one side. This is the Paua rim. It's a little greener on one side than the other. This is pink abalone, and that's the underside of it. And this, I love this stuff. This is called, it's from Korean awabi shell, A-W-A-B-I. And I use this stuff for water when I'm doing, you know, rivers and stuff like that, because it's just Wonderful stuff. The neat thing about the laminates is that you can get materials to use that are not available in solid blanks, because a lot of these shells are small and heavily curved and you can't get really decent sized flat blanks out of them. So they flatten this stuff out when they have to and make the laminates out of it. This is a very thin layer of Power Heart. It's only 30 thousandths, and I normally don't go down that thin. So what I did on this one was, a friend of mine gave this to me, and I just laminated a sheet of 10 thousandths brass on the underside of it. So it brings it up to 40 thousandths, and I have to be careful when I'm sanding it, not to sand through, but and I can cut my own strips from it. I have a little strip cutter that I made. Not every place has tap plastics, but this area fortunately does. So I get these acrylics that are either solid colored in different shades. I think one of these things in here I got was from an old record bin when they still had record stores. This separator between the two areas. There's a real thin sheet of graphite in a checkerboard pattern. The graphite is impossible or very difficult to cut with a regular jeweler's saw blade because they're just high-speed steel, but if you're routing it out with a carbide end mill, it's just like going through butter. So that's how I usually end up cutting that stuff. I have in here, oh yeah, the famous mother of toilet seat acrylic, which some people like for position markers on their necks. And we have some, where is it? I got some stuff in here that's translucent. You can actually see through it. And what I do with that stuff is, this is gold translucent. And what I usually do with that is, if I just put this in as it comes from the store into a dark fingerboard, the color will disappear completely. So what I do is I paint the underside of it with a more reflective color. And you can see here, you can see through it, you know, but if I put the coloring under it, it reflects back up through the non-colored section. Now this is red translucent, where I was trying some different effects. So it's kind of a lemon yellow that, once again, silver paint on the underside.
Have you ever used glow-in-the-dark materials?
Yeah, I have a few times. And for the longest time, I've wanted to use those ultraviolet fluorescing stone pieces, but they're difficult to cut in small shapes. So I've been trying to think of a project that I could use them on, but I'm busy with other things at the moment, so it's just kind of fallen by the wayside. One of my mainstays now, because shells are not the end-all be-all, is, well, let me put it down here so you can see these are dyed stabilized wood. This stuff is basically a light colored wood that has coloring pumped into it through a vacuum chamber. You put this stuff in a vacuum chamber and some coloring agent, and it goes through the entire piece. All the cells completely through are colored, and the way that it comes normally is in...
Is that so that when you sand through it, the dye is in all
the dye is in everything. Yeah, let's go over here for a second. Here we go. The blocks are usually about this size, maybe a little bit bigger. But in a vacuum chamber, the coloring agent goes through the entire thing, and they can double dye these so that they're two different colors. And when they get out of the dye bath, it goes into an oven to dry it out completely, and then they put it back into the vacuum chamber with an acrylic resin. And that permeates all the cells, and that makes it super hard, super stable. You can cut this at any axis, and it won't fall apart like if this was just a piece of maple and you tried to cut it on the x-axis or something, you'd be just falling apart. So
Yeah,
I resaw this stuff. I got these from Tyler Wells. I resaw that stuff and use it in all kinds of things. And you can get this stuff off of eBay and Amazon, of course. Some of these things, sometimes the dye doesn't completely go through it, and you just get these marvelous little serendipitous colors out of here that work well, and you have to know what you're looking for when you're buying them. But and some of this stuff is just they just put the resin in and they don't color it, so it's still pretty hard, but it doesn't have the extra coloring in it. The other nice thing about it is you still see the original grain of the wood in it. So it's a natural material, and you still get the serendipity of whatever the grain is going to do. Use maple and broadleaf maple. This is Pernambuco that somebody sent me for something and just said keep the rest. Here's what I used out of it, and they just said keep the rest. A lot of times there's some rosewood. I think no, that might be Pernambuco too. There's a lot of times I'll use something and I'll get a call from a cabinet maker going, I've got this really nice piece of flame maple, you'd love it for inlays. And it looks good in a big piece, but when you get it down to something like this, you can't see any kind of grain action or waviness or anything. So it's a matter of scale. It's all a matter of scale. I don't have a large wall of shame, but this particular inlay here I did for John Grevin's 60th anniversary of building guitars. And when I finished sanding everything out, this area here was just a little bit too low. So when they would, if they were going to fret that after it was on the neck, there would be buzzing on that area. And I didn't want to, I don't let anything out of here that's not right. So I kept that one and I made another one and sent it off to him, and he was happy. But it doesn't, sometimes you can't even see the mistakes, but if I know they're there, I don't want the customer to find it 2 years down the road and go, hey. So I take care of things as soon as I see them. And, it took me, I don't know how long it took me to make that, but that's just an object lesson in paying attention.
Beautiful.
There's nothing that goes out into the world that is perfect, and we know that. You just try to minimize the amount of mistakes that you're going to have out there in the world, and you don't want people coming back. The age of the internet is upon us and has been for some time, and it only takes one angry customer to ruin a lifetime of. It's like when you're driving your car, you can go accident free for 30, 40 years, and if you hit something, all of a sudden you're tagged as that. That's your epitaph. You're a criminal, or you're a lousy driver. You could have avoided 1,000 accidents by other dumb people coming too close to you that you've avoided, but it only takes one thing for people to really get tweaked about it. So that's just us as a species, I guess. Oh, here's some more dyed stabilized wood that's been double dyed. There's reds and blues in this, in the burl section.
Those are sweet.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to use those on, but when I saw them on eBay, I went, I want that. And I also experiment with other methods of getting the colors that I want. This is white cardstock, relatively thin. What is this? It's about 12 thousandths thick. And what I will do with this is alcohol-based inks. I just blop them on there and let them merge into each other, and when they dry, I can glue clear acetate over the top, use super glue to glue clear acetate over the top, and that gives me about 35 thousandths of thickness, and then I can glue the 10 thousandths brass on the underside, and I have a nice flat plate of something that I can cut a shape out of and have something that I wouldn't be able to get any other way. So I've used that a few times. I'm still experimenting after all these years. I'm just perpetually curious, I guess. I tried doing a peacock feather encased in two pieces, back and front, of the acrylic or the acetate, and it doesn't really take the color as well as I would have hoped. I mean, when you get a good light on it, you can see some decent color, but I wouldn't know how to cut this to make it work. I remember being at Alembic and Carlos Santana showed up with a whole plate full of blue Morpho butterfly wings that were tacked to the plate. And he wanted the top of one of his guitars to be covered with these things. And Rick Turner did a test on it, and butterfly wings are just individual little tags or plates of iridescence, and when you spray them, color's all gone. They just turn brown. So he had to give it back to Carlos and say, sorry, can't do it. I think there's a way to do it where I could possibly glue peacock feathers to a body and then put a clear plexiglass plate over the top without actually gluing it to the feathers, and that might work. But I'll save that for when I'm 90 or 100 or so.